Salutations, nerds. I'm Rick Y, the wise guy. And today is December 9th, 2024, and it is a beautiful day to revisit tariffs. This weekend, Trump decided to have a nice little sit-down interview. You know, in front of a camera, on record, for everyone to see. With Kristen Welker. Now, to be completely transparent here, when she took over Meet the Press, I was enthusiastic, but then quickly kind of unhappy with the seemingly softball interviews she chose to hold, and then the debate of 2020 that I can at least say was outshone this year. And at that point, nobody's household pet had been consumed or whatever the hell. But this weekend, she had an interview that was released where she spoke with the incoming president and sentient hash brown, Donald Trump. And instead of soft pitches the entire time, she actually offered up a few tough ones that got into the fascia of his thought processes a little bit. Today, I plan on going over a few of the highlights that actually kind of had me happy to see some questions that needed to be on record with the incoming executive, as well as inconsistencies and outright lies that Trump so graciously volunteered. So I'm sorry that this may be a long one and maybe even in parts, but these things have to be addressed. Luckily, I don't tolerate gish gallops, and I most certainly will address every single point made if you so choose to make them. So, if you dig what I've got to provide and think I can help someone else, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want some daily updates, hit that little notification there. I'd be much obliged. First, some housekeeping. Let's cover where I am on this. In no way am I going to go out on a limb saying that we can now depend completely on Kristen Welker to bring us the hard facts 100% of the time. We can't, she won't, and you shouldn't. However, I do need to point something out because as it is clear to me, it will become probably abundantly clear to everybody else in the coming months, there is a specific way with which you get the attention of Donald Trump. He isn't going to sit down for any kind of interviews on camera that he feels are going to be too hard on him or too critical of his behavior. So I see that although she was being softer than I would personally like, and probably many of you would have liked, she may have been soft enough to sit down in front of a camera with this man long enough to glean actual relevant information. So she started by asking about his first 100 days. It didn't take long before the first droppings came forth. Clearly someone gave the bull some X-lax ahead of this conversation because Trump stated that people are coming in by the millions. First off, numbers mean something, and people are not coming in by the millions. If we were to total all the foreigners arriving in the United States to include legal and illegal, it's like 70,000 a day. So now before you go screaming online about how there are 70,000 illegal immigrants pouring over the border, I didn't say that, okay? Out of that number, only around 5,000 are unauthorized entries on a daily basis. I mean, it's a high number, don't get me wrong, and nobody really has ground to argue with you there. But millions? Not even close. He even went on to say that jails and mental institutions were being emptied into our country. Again, not in any way, shape, or form is that close to reality. If anyone can prove that to me that this is occurring, especially in some wide-scale amount, in the comments, go right ahead. I welcome it. Also, for crying out loud, stop stigmatizing people who are in need of mental health treatment. If somebody's using mental health as a way to demonize someone else, tread carefully. Their intentions are not morally sound. He then went on to point out something that I think kind of gave his game away. Tax cuts. He said something along the lines of extending them. I want you all to understand why he said that. These cuts were set to expire this year, but he hadn't planned on being in office. These tax cuts are going to hike up when he can run away from the responsibility of them. Bet. Originally, this was the tax cuts that he started and implemented in his first term but now they're kind of catching up and biting him in the ass. So now he wants to try and extend these cuts so that he doesn't feel the heat. He then went on to speak on crime in the cities. And I don't know if you're alive during the Super Predator 90s. You may not actually gather the racist undertones in that statement. But this isn't the first time people targeted city crime without entirely going out of their way to say what it is that they mean. I'll just cut to the chase. They mean people of color, minorities. When people want to focus on crime in cities specifically, that's the code that they're going to use to target minorities and people of color specifically. He's saying it out loud. And this is 1 minute and 14 seconds into the interview, and he hasn't even taken the oath yet, so buckle up. He then spent the next few minutes gushing over Pete Hegseth. Let's see how long it takes before he disavows ever having even met the man. He also went on to talk about the man's military career, and although some of you may want to hear it, I don't have it in me to speak ill of another person's service to this country. If they were honorably discharged, regardless of how big of a sack of shit they may be now, it doesn't feel right talking about it. I don't have many personal rules myself. That's one of them. What I will touch on is that Pete Hegseth said he would stop drinking if he was given the position of Secretary of Defense. That I have no confidence in the man to properly dignify. And this is where I become concerned, because it's clear to me that the man is in need of a high government position. He's in need of some substance abuse therapy. And I want everyone to understand that there's nothing wrong with admitting that you're addicted to something or recovering from addiction. But if there's one thing I know from personal experience, a man isn't going to change by reinforcing his worst influences. If you're curious what I mean by that, just take a look at the spiral that is Ronnie Jackson. But it didn't take long before Kristen Welker actually, to her credit, asked him a series of questions that personally I was curious about his answers. The tariffs. Also mentioned ending inflation and his promises to lower prices. She pointedly asked him, can you guarantee that American families won't pay more? And you know what this man said? Quote, I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. Solid. He then went on to talk about the inflation rate when he turned his presidency over in 2020 during the height of the global pandemic. If nobody has filled you in yet, let me just be as clear as crystal here. You will not get inflation rates down to those levels ever again. Period. And if you think that it is possible, I challenge you to demand that as your priority goal for Donald Trump, if you supported him. Don't move that goalpost. Expect that inflation rates from when he left office, if that is your personal position. You're going to be disappointed, but I suggest you hold firm to your expectations. Now, when it never happens without again facing global catastrophe, have some integrity and then hold the man to it. But you'll notice he went on to say that we are subsidizing Mexico and Canada. I would love to know where and what the hell he's even talking about at this point. Again, Mexico and Canada are only responsible for holding up their end of a trade agreement that Donald Trump authored in his first term. It was called the USMCA, and it was touted as being better than NAFTA. You remember that? Now, granted, it was merely just kind of taking NAFTA and improving upon things that was already in place and then slapping his name on it, but that was literally his entire industry, so why expect anything different? Furthermore, if you really want to see what tariffs do, look at how his initial tariffs affected the farmers in his first term. It's a doozy. But she went on to actually press him further by asking how he expected to hold CEOs responsible for these prices and how he would enforce making sure that they wouldn't be passed on to the consumers. To everyone's shock, he didn't answer the question. He rambled about wars and other things. The man said he has actually stopped wars with tariffs. Fucking where? What are you talking about? He finished strong by rambling about COVID or something. I was having a difficult time tracking that weave in this case. He also said that they are good for getting other thing outside of economics. Fine. He's implying that it is being used as a negotiating tool, but he's yet to describe or detail any negotiation in which his previous tariffs gave us any form of leverage. What did we get from the tariffs he originally imposed? Farmers lost everything. And international litigation. He then went on to say that we got a lot out of our original tariffs for washing machine dumping from China and South Korea, who's our ally. Update, the WTO, or World Trade Organization, awarded $85 million to South Korea in a lawsuit against the United States in 2019, which allowed them, our allies and partners, to impose sanctions on us to make up for the amount that we owed to them. They've already threatened to impose more sanctions if we continue to practice and these unfair trade behaviors, because, duh, why wouldn't they? This is within the first 8 minutes and 16 seconds, and already I am inundated with lies and mischaracterizations of reality as a viewer that no wonder his supporters and voters are so off base for. His propensity to hit everything with an open fire hydrant of horseshit is how he holds back the ridicule he deserves. Again, I'm not a fan of hers, Kristen Welker, on the grand scheme, but I don't know how she was able to handle this interview. He derailed it so frequently with babble and claims he can't or won't prove that there was no way to determine what his intentions are going forward. I'm going to come back here in a little while to provide more of a synopsis on this wild ride of an interview, because again, there are a lot of subtleties that if you don't immediately catch them, they go off into the cultural zeitgeist as fact. And we can't allow that to happen. We need to stay informed, stay engaged, but most importantly, stay decent. Until volume 2 of this insanity, deuces.